What else?
Horseback riding. I love that one.
I was thinking of something where you really got to like stay upright.
You know, your everyday movements like horseback riding.
Or riding a bike.
Yeah,
or
riding a
what
bike.
else?
Literally anything. You need your core all the time to be working, standing. People that stand at work for 8 hours straight.
Yeah, let's make I don't know why I'm trying to go. I just watched the Love Island reunion and they mentioned horseback riding. I think that's why.
Welcome to Pelvic POV with your hosts and doctors of physical therapy, Amanda Neary and Hannah Meyer. What's up, pelvic freaks? Welcome back to another episode of Pelvic POV.
We're your freaks for us and we're freaks for your pelvis, baby.
What's up, Hannah?
Are we ever gonna get sick of that intro? I kind of like it.
I kind of like it, but we might.
We can always switch it up.
We can let the fans decide. What do you want to talk about today?
So we got our coffees today.
La Colombe.
La Colombe.
Baby.
Okay. And La Colombe put out their fall flavors. Their fall flavors this month. So I got my first pumpkin spice latte of the year.
I did not yet because I need to be in summer mode for at least 5 more weeks.
Yeah.
Till I'm back from Greece.
I am once they put the pumpkin spice flavor out in coffee shops, I'm like, it is now fall. Bye.
I know. It's just the best flavors too. Like everything should be pumpkin all the time.
I know. I need to go to Target. I need to go to Bath and Body Works. I got to get pumpkin candles. I got to get autumn leaves scent candles. I got to get marshmallow fireside.
Hannah and I went to PetSmart this week and we got Halloween stuff for our cats.
We got matching bandanas for our cats that have jack-o'-lanterns on them.
So cute. I love Halloween in fall. It's easily the best.
Yeah.
You told me that you know what we're going to be for Halloween, but you didn't tell me.
Oh, yes. I want to be Marie Antoinette. I was imagining like the Chapel Roan, how she does like the makeup and then does like her like outfit.
So I wanted, when we went to Lala, I was like, I want to be Wrestler Chapel.
Okay.
Because it's
so we
hot.
could be just like different versions of Chapel Roan or something.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many options.
Okay,
like
well,
all
we
her
have time.
My Kink is Karma shows, those outfits are so fun.
Yeah.
And I feel like we could actually make those because there's not as much fabric involved.
Yeah. I love making my costumes. I usually like to be scary, but I think I want to be sexy this year. I mean,
we could be both.
I want to be sexy and scary.
Lauren, did I tell you what my roommate said? Lauren, I'm shouting you out. She goes, I want to be who's the guy, the Scrooge from A Christmas Carol?
Edward.
No. No, not that. Wait. The Scrooge. The guy
I'm sure his
like,
name is Edward. Edward Scrooge.
And I was like, I want to be something really sexy this year. And she was like, well, I'm going to be the Scrooge. And I asked her, I was like, can we do a couple's costume? Mm-hmm. She's like, I'm going to be the Scrooge. And I was like, okay, then I'll be something really sexy from A Christmas Carol. Mm-hmm. And she's like, Tiny Tim.
There we go. We'll have to think of a list of ideas. We could do some kind of like group costume.
Yeah, I want to be like a witchy and scary and hot.
We could be witches.
We could be witches. We are witches.
I mean, yeah, we are. So we might as well.
Might as well not dress up.
But we'll think about it. We'll keep you guys updated on what we're going to be for Halloween.
Yeah, we're excited for Halloween already. It's going to be here so soon. So what are we going to talk about today on the pod?
Today we're going to talk about core stability.
Act a little more excited about it, why don't you?
I was thinking about how I wanted to say that.
Today we're gonna welcome to class. Today we're gonna discuss core stability.
Get out your pens and papers and pencils and erasers. All right, no. So actually, when patients come in, a lot of times we see this with people who come in postpartum, and we always ask, like, what are your goals? What are your fitness goals? Or what are your exercise goals? And then just like your functional goals in general with coming to PT. And more often than not, I would say maybe like 8 times out of 10, people will say, I want to tone my core. I want to tone my abs. I want to feel stronger in my core. Mm-hmm. I want to feel like good in a bathing suit and like things like that is a very common. Yeah. I mean, especially like postpartum and you want to like reconnect with your body again. And like you always feel a lot of core weakness postpartum. pretty much.
Mhm.
I mean, your abs separate during pregnancy, and then you have your baby, and then getting that like feeling of like feeling more together
Mhm.
is super important.
Yeah, just to have that strength and stability back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it.
So we were going to address ways that we approach core stability from a pelvic floor PT standpoint, because it's probably different than your typical workout. If you're going to go to the gym and you're like, oh, I want to train my abs, I want to train core today. Like, and then you start doing like sit-ups or crunches, etc. So we'll kind of dive into how we approach retraining the abdominal muscles or the deep core muscles.
Can we start by talking about what the heck people mean when they say core?
Mm-hmm.
Because this was also, do you remember when people were like, it was trending in the PT world to be like, stop prescribing 3 sets of 10 and everything has to be individualized, and stop calling it the core when it's really your trunk stabilizers. And people were getting really nitpicky about certain things that were happening in like PT education and personal training, Instagram knowledge, and all of that. So, what do we mean when we say the core? The core is made up of a lot of different muscles that are not just the abdominals, in like my version of the core.
Yeah, when most people think of, I want to strengthen my core, you're thinking of the six-pack muscle, you're thinking of the rectus abdominis.
Mm-hmm.
But when you want to like feel stronger in general, you can't just train the rectus abdominis.
Yes.
There's a lot of other muscles that work together.
Yeah, so just within the abdominals, we have your transversus abdominis, which is our big one that we work on a lot with people.
If you come to pelvic floor PT, you're going to hear us say it all the time. TRA brace, engage your TA.
And then you have your internal obliques, external obliques, your rectus abdominis, which you mentioned. And then if I'm doing any like core trunk stabilization, I'm also focusing on those back muscles. You have your multifidus, you have your paraspinals, your QL. I'm always looking at glutes because those are going to be supportive of the pelvic girdle in general. And I always include that in my core training.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot more going on than people tend to think.
Yeah. So when we think of like what the function of the core is, I think of it as like the core muscles, or all the muscles that Amanda just mentioned, are there to help support your spine and make you feel stable throughout your workouts or throughout functional like everyday activities, where it's like mowing the grass.
You have the funniest little tidbits you throw in. Think about when you
never
mow
mowed the grass.
Doesn't have a lawn.
I don't know why I was thinking like mowing the grass, like you gotta like pull the. Do you still have to do that when do you guys, for those of you that mow lawns, do you still have to yank the cord?
I need to know.
Yeah.
Well, right? You must.
For when you're, whatever you're doing. So let's get back to the point. The function of the core is to keep your spine stable and to make you feel stable and controlled throughout just functional everyday life movements, whether it's mowing the lawn, like I said, horseback riding. I don't know. What else?
Horseback riding. I love that one.
I was thinking of something where you really got to like stay upright.
You know, your everyday movements like horseback riding.
Or riding a bike.
Yeah,
or
riding a bike. Literally anything. You need your core all the time to be working, standing. People that stand at work for 8 hours straight.
Yeah, let's make I don't know why I'm trying to go. I just watched the Love Island reunion and they mentioned horseback riding. I think that's why.
Yeah, I mean, I love horseback riding, so I'm into it.
Yeah, but okay, let's think about more everyday movements. Standing at work, walking to work.
Mm-hmm. Doing dishes, doing laundry. Your core muscles are going to stabilize, but they're also going to be responsible for the movements of your spine. In the lumbar spine, you have your flexion, extension, side bending, rotation. That's all coming from those deep core stabilizers.
Mm-hmm. And when we think about starting off with retraining our core muscles, so we're trying to strengthen our core. If we're starting at like step one, when we think of like retraining the core, we think of one, learning how to engage those deep core muscles, not just the rectus abdominis. And then two, I like to think doing anti-rotation movements, because if the function of the core is to keep the spine stable, then you want to be able to resist rotation. So think of like a Pallof press. Instead of doing like a sit-up or like a crunch where you're bending the spine, something that we can do to help like really retrain those core muscles is by resisting those motions to try to retrain keeping the spine stable with perturbations. That's the word I'm trying to think of.
Perturbations.
Like
one of my favorite words.
Perturbations. You want to keep the spine like stable.
Yeah, I love the mention of the peel off press. That's an oldie but a goodie. I love bringing
It's a
it in all the
classic.
time. It's just a classic.
But then you also want to be able to do like, you want to feel strong with like flexion, like lumbar flexion, extension, and rotation movements too. So like that would be like my next step.
So why do people always think of crunches and sit-ups?
And why do we not like crunches and sit-ups as our first like go-to for strengthening the core?
Yeah. So your crunches and sit-ups, typically the way most people do them, they're only going to activate the rectus abdominis, abdominal musculature, and they're going to heavily rely on your hip flexors to actually move your body. So when people think about training their abs, you're probably thinking about that six-pack muscle that is your rectus abdominis. There's so much more going into it to actually see that muscle in its six-pack form than we think about. And doing crunches is not really going to get you there in the long run if you don't have that core stability underneath it. So we don't love doing that, but for multiple reasons. So one is that you're going to overuse those hip flexors if you don't actually have strength in your core muscles.
Yeah.
Two, because we're rehabbing a lot of people postpartum and they have that. Do you say diastasis or diastasis?
I say diastasis because I think it sounds more demure.
I also say diastasis. Oh, it's more mindful.
It's very mindful and very demure.
So classy.
Yeah.
Okay. So when people have diastasis in their abdominal muscles, you're not going to want to do those heavy crunch motions that are going to activate the rectus abdominis because that's the muscle that has gapping in it. And if you're flexing that muscle into the gapping, it's going to be harder to actually close that gap and bring that muscle back together. What you really want to be activating is the muscles underneath that are stabilizing the core to help facilitate everything healing as we want it to.
Yes. And we're going to dive more into like C-sections and postpartum, like core strengthening specifically with pregnancy too, because that's a common one we see. But I think one thing more I wanted to mention about like sit-ups, another reason why we don't really like it, you'll probably rarely see us give you a sit-up in the clinic unless I'm just like assessing your ability to do a sit-up for like an objective measurement to like reassess later on. Because you have to be able to do a sit-up, like if you're trying to sit up in bed eventually or something like that. You have to be able to like do that to feel strong. But the reason why we won't give you that exercise in the clinic is another reason is because it puts a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor too. A lot of times people will be holding their breath. I call it the Frankenstein when they are in bed and they're like, you know, and you're trying to Frankenstein up out of bed. Like we don't want that. And then you're holding your breath, Valsalva maneuver, pushing on your pelvic floor muscles instead of trying to like exhale and engage. So let's just like, we're feeling weak right now. Let's hold this off for later and let's do some like actual, like, let's do some better moves for strengthening your core before we get to that point.
I like the way you said that because I don't think it's inherently the sit-up that is wrong. It's the way people are doing it. And it's no fault of anyone's, right? Like we don't, in fitness classes, we're not getting that targeted, like one-on-one advice on how to draw in and not Valsalva and draw in and make sure your pelvic floor is supported when you're sitting up. So we're just like doing what the body instinctively is going to do with muscles that aren't ready for that movement. Because it's harder than we think it is. And you're going to compensate with other musculature that is more readily available to help you with that movement. And that's going to lead to more pressure on the pelvic floor.
Yeah. Like that's a good point that you made. We actually wanted to talk about this. I'm glad you bring that up because, for example, like sometimes I'll go to a fitness class and an instructor will say like, when they want you to engage your TA, they'll say like, bring your belly button to spine, which I've used that as a cue before, but only when I'm like directly watching that person one-on-one to see if that like works for them. Because a lot of times I'll see people just suck their stomach in and then they're not engaging their core
while they inhale. You just did it too. That's what they end up doing. It's like, okay, suck everything in. And then they're like holding their breath to actually try to activate the muscle. And then we're just getting the opposite of what we want.
And you're still putting pressure on the pelvic floor and it's not great. So not saying that cue is wrong because that's a common cue, especially in the Pilates world that I hear. Not saying it's wrong, but just know that when people hear that cue, they might not be doing it in the way you think that they are.
It takes a lot of time and effort to actually activate the transversus abdominis well. And I would say in most of my sessions that we're starting deep core stabilization, that's like the only exercise we'll end up doing for that session because it can take so long to find the cues that work for each individual person.
And I'll tell people too, like when we do work on like just deep core, like if we're working like bracing, like marching supine and stuff like that. I'm like, these are very small movements. It's not going to be like what you think of when you do your typical core workout. And it might seem like easier, but we're trying to work as slow as possible because we're working on these muscles deeper than your rectus so that your rectus doesn't take over and that we're only training the rectus. We're trying to just train those like deep core muscles that don't fire as strongly with like bigger movements, I guess.
I think it's beautifully said.
If I said that right. Because the rectus is a big muscle. It likes to take over and take control. But we want to be able to train the core without only the rectus firing, or I guess not only firing, but the rectus firing over the other muscles.
Yeah, and we so often in pelvic floor therapy are coming from a position where we want to protect the rectus abdominis because it's been affected by pregnancy, or we should probably touch on like C-sections too. And so we're not trying to overuse that muscle. We're trying to stabilize and create strength from another aspect.
Yeah.
But getting into what a C-section actually does to the body, when you have a C-section, what they're actually cutting through, they make a horizontal incision on the lower abdomen, and that's cutting through the skin, fascia, everything above that rectus abdominis, and then they're just pulling and separating that rectus abdominis and then making another uterine incision. So all the incisions made are horizontal, but they're not horizontally cutting through your rectus abdominis, which runs vertically. So I think that's something that even before we knew what it was, we would picture like you're just slicing through everything. And
because you hear commonly like, oh, you're cutting through 7 layers of tissue, but it's way more instrumental.
It's
what am
nuanced,
I trying to say?
More nuanced.
It's more nuanced. Ooh. That was very demure.
Nuanced is a demure word.
It is a demure word. But yeah, you cut through like the skin and the fascia, and then you pull apart the abdomen, the muscles. They're not actually making that horizontal cut through the muscles.
And the reason for that is that they want to maintain the integrity of that muscle contraction.
But that action of pulling apart still does impact your muscle. Think about like during pregnancy, women get a diastasis during pregnancy because your abs have to separate to make room for the baby. So when you're separating those muscles apart during a C-section too, it's like the same idea. So your abs are still affected, but not in as the traumatic of way as people are thinking. It's like straight up just cutting the muscle.
When we see C-section patients postpartum, we're basically treating abdominal retraining the same way as we would after any pregnancy. The surgery part, we're not treating the same way. Yeah. The abdominal training part, I treat like a large diastasis. A C-section is a surgery, and any surgery I treat like a major trauma to the body where like you're looking at about a year for recovery from any incision put in the body. So that is a different recovery than delivering vaginally. But in terms of abdominal musculature, we're probably starting with the same exercises for those patients once they're ready to get to that point.
Yeah. And it might just take a little bit longer for someone with a C-section too. Because with a C-section too, we're going to be like approaching like the scar care, and like you'll probably have more like sensitivity in that area. A lot of times I'll see people will have like tenderness or sensitivity above their C-section scar, and that is most likely due to that like deeper incision they make into the uterus is what I'm thinking. I would love to have an OB or someone come in who does C-sections.
Yeah.
Or someone who is in the room performing a C-section to come in on the podcast and like be like, this is what to prepare for. This is what to know about your C-section. Boom. So that you guys can come back and listen to that episode.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be great.
We can see if we can get a C-section surgeon in here sometime soon.
Yeah. So if you're a surgeon, hit us up.
Hit us up, surgeon.
If you're a surgeon, hit us up. Like,
Hannah's like, hit me up.
We just want you on the podcast to talk about surgeries. Nothing else. Going back into the sit-ups with C-sections particularly, I've had patients post C-section try sit-ups and crunches too early, too soon, and then they get more pain where their incision was made. So that's another reason why we try to like kind of limit the sit-ups and crunches for like a later date. I will test like someone's crunch or sit-up earlier on, and then 6 or 8 weeks later, retest it. And we haven't done sit-ups the entire plan of care, but they'll be able to do a sit-up again.
And that goes for after vaginal delivery too.
Yeah.
Because even though you don't have that incision that you're working with, those muscles are still stretched and weakened. So like most people post-vaginal delivery try to do a sit-up and they're like, oh shit, I can't do that.
So this kind of talk turned a little bit into like some postpartum talk. But
I think that's what we were inspired by for this discussion today.
But this also works with there's anyone who is trying to like tone their core or like strengthen their core in general.
I mean, with personal training clients, when I was training more regularly, my clients would come and haven't worked out or lifted weights in 2 to 3 years, and we'd get into core training, and it's the same process. You know, those muscles have a strong memory for their like daily functional movements that you're doing. But if you're starting to specifically train those muscles again, you need to start with your deep core stabilizers. In any case, this is why I love
Pilates. I knew you were gonna say it. I was just gonna be like,
I just love it.
My core, right? This core has never felt as strong as it has been since I've started doing Pilates, and I really only go like once a week.
Yeah, honestly, I was going once a week for 7 months. I felt incredible, and I'm scared to go back because it's been a month and a half, and I know it's going to be so hard again. But I'm so excited to get back into it.
Hard. I do pole dancing too, and I do a lot of like pole is a lot of core strength, but it's in a different way. Like I feel like doing Pilates at the same time as doing my pole dancing training has really helped me progress more in my tricks that I do at pole because I feel so much more like strong and controlled, and I'm more like stable so that when I like try to like lift myself up, I'm like really using the core muscles in an accurate way, not just like hoisting up there.
Well, you're getting targeted and you're getting accessory muscles with Pilates, which is going to help train you for your sport. So for me, I'm not training for anything like specific like Hannah is, but I do a lot of like barbell weightlifting, and I still feel like Pilates made such a huge difference for my lifting. Even though those are compound functional core movements, being able to really stabilize those deep muscles in isolation and in a dedicated way has really helped my strength training in general.
Heck yeah.
It's cool.
I love that. I need to lift more too.
We can start lifting.
I'm a big fan of using different workouts to put them all together because I feel like they all influence each other. Like I'm kind of like right now my routine is like a yoga once a week for like flexibility. Well, I mean, I haven't gone to yoga in a couple weeks.
Same, but I do want to get back into my
Let's go back to ritual.
Yeah, I need sweat in my mouth.
We need to visit X. We have this like hot yoga place that we go to that we love.
It's so good.
Yeah. But like my ideal would be like yoga for flexibility, like Pilates for like that deep core stability training, and then like some lifting to like keep me strong so that I can do my pole workouts. That's sometimes people think of like exercise and like, okay, I just go to Pilates. You can mix it up. I feel like that helps you stay on top of your workouts if you're constantly like mixing it up. Yeah.
It's fun too.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's whatever you're going to do, but I enjoy having
whatever
a mix.
You enjoy.
Yeah.
Whatever you enjoy. If you don't like running, don't run.
I can't stress this enough. If you don't like running, don't run.
Do you guys have any questions about this little episode?
Actually, please submit a question. We would love to know your thoughts on this. We have links in our bio if you want to submit a question, story, anything for us. Make sure you're following us on social media at Pelvic POV.
And follow our personal accounts at Hannah Meyerr, Meyerr,
and Amanda Neary, PT, and is in November.
And is in N. That's it. Because I can't think of anything today.
That's fair. And is in Nosferatu.
And is in Nosferatu.
All right. Peace out.
Bye.